Hi there. I'm Sonny Fox, and today, Joan and Jimmy and I feel kind of like the Three Musketeers, being surrounded as we are by this swords play going on. We're going to find out about this ancient sport of swordsmanship. And right now, in front of us, we're watching a very exciting match taking place in fencing foils. We're at the Fencers Club on East 53rd Street, and we're going to find out about this ancient practice right in the shadow of some of the most modern skyscrapers. As a matter of fact, the UN building is just about a block from here. We're going to meet some of these fencers, some of these very fine fencers and champions here in a little while. Right over here, Jimmy, you see two of the very best. Now this gentleman over here, the tall one, is Mr. Jose de Capriles. He's formerly captain of our Olympic team in the past Olympics in 1956. So he really knows his way around here, and he's going to show us some of the things we should know. Mr. de Capriles.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you. This is Joan, and this is Jimmy.
Hello, Jimmy, Joan.
Nice to see you. Winded?
Oh, I should say, I've just been fencing a terrific fellow. He's deadly with that point.
Well, now, before we get too much further into fencing, I want to clear up one thing. Joan is under the impression, or was under the impression, that dueling was almost identical with fencing.
Well, no, not quite. You know, the duel is a dangerous and sometimes fatal combat with a sharp-pointed weapon, very much like this. This is the rapier, which was used by the musketeers in times when men would duel to defend their honor or to defend themselves against highwaymen. Now,
there's quite a difference between those two blades, as you can see.
Oh.
Do you know what highwaymen are, John?
No, I was
Jim?
going to ask you. Well, thieves.
That's right, robbers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see the guards, the difference in the guards? This is a big, heavy thing. This is a very light, small one. And the blades,
one is very thick and broad, and the other is kind of thin and quadrangular. But there's quite a bit of difference up there at the points, too.
Yes.
There sure are. This one sort of has another shield on it, and it's blunted.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is a pointy one, and you can really get hurt.
You're
with that
right.
one.
And you know, in order to learn swordsmanship, to stay alive, they developed fencing, which is nothing more than sword play with blunted weapons. Okay? And these men would continue with these things forever and skewer each other and so forth. But eventually, the duel became outlawed. Nobody was doing it anymore. And we had left fencing, which we know today. It's a wonderful sport.
How many weapons are there in modern fencing?
Well, we use three. This foil, a saber, and an épée.
All right, well, let's take them one at a time. Now, your partner seems to have kind of disappeared, so
Yes.
can we find another foil match going on?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, there's another match up there, and I think maybe it'd be fun to see it.
Yes.
Now, who are these? Whoop. Who are these fencers
Well,
that we're watching?
On this side, we have Harold Goldsmith, our Pan American champion. And he's been fencing with Marietta Penchard, one of our very good women fencers.
Never knew that women really enjoyed fencing.
Oh,
did it?
yes, they're very good. And they have their own championships, even.
Guess that makes me eligible to be a musketeer also.
Sure, why not? A
Right.
woman musketeer, maybe D'Artagnan wouldn't approve, but I think we will. I
He
think
isn't
we'll
around
accept you. No,
anymore.
he isn't around anyway. That's right. Well, they are using the foil, and I've noticed that in their match and in your match, it seems to me that they were aiming at a very limited area of the body.
Yes, that's right. In foil, the target has been limited. The trunk of the body is the only vulnerable part. The head and the legs and the arms don't count.
Just,
you have to make touches with the point. Just about like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because it was a preparation for a duel, you see, they had to learn accuracy and control of the weapon. And of course the trunk of the body had all the vital parts to attack. And they didn't have masks in the early days, so by restricting the target, it made it a little safer to practice.
Well, now, these rules that you've been discussing here, it seems to me, I've heard a lot of other rules, and also seems to me that the whole sport of fencing is governed by not only these rules, but by a great number of rituals.
Well, yes, I suppose you could say that, but the rituals are nothing else than the common courtesies of the sword, which have been handed down to us. The rules, yes, we have. In order to learn to defend and attack properly, we developed rules which we call the convention of right-of-way.
Right-of-way, now what would that be?
Well, it might be a little complicated to explain, but perhaps we can show you. Now, for instance, Harold is going to attack Marietta. Now, that's the attack. Having done so, he has what we call the right-of-way. And Marietta is put under an obligation to block that attack by pushing his blade aside in a parry. Once she does that, then she has the right-of-way and may, in turn, thrust at him. Now, since Harold has been parried on his attack and Marietta has gained the right-of-way, Harold must assume the defensive again and parry her attack before he can, in turn, thrust again.
Let's see that slowly.
Now, here it goes. Harold makes the attack, and there is the parry, see?
And he has resumed the defensive.
And he has resumed the defensive.
And he, now, having resumed the defensive, he can attack. So it's attack, defense, attack, defense.
Yes, like a conversation of blades.
Are there any other kinds of parries besides knocking the blade
yes.
aside?
Now, for instance, Marietta has a lot of alternatives. You just saw her block a blade with a side parry. Now, on the next attack, when Harold comes forward, she'll parry with a circle, taking the blade out with a circular motion, you see. But Harold is not at loss there. He can deceive that parry and still score on the attack. There he deceived it and fit, you see.
He's just gone around her.
Exactly. Now Marietta, in turn, can make two counter parries and catch him on it, you see. There's the second one, and that takes it out. Now that can build up into a tremendous combination.
I imagine there are all kinds of parries and variations, and
yes,
what if we can see
part
some of them in fast
All
motion?
right, if you please.
Well, you know, it's funny, I know what we're looking for, but I can't see it. Can you, Jen and Jimmy? I mean, the details are really
Yes,
lost
it-
because it's so fast.
Yes, it is hard to follow because it is fast. You have to get your eye accustomed.
Now, a little while ago, on another match, as we passed down the floor here, we saw some jewelers or fencers, really,
Thank you.
slashing as well as thrusting.
Oh yes, that's the saber. You know, the rapier with its sharp point was not the only combat weapon. Horsemen would fence and duel with sharp blades that had a cutting edge. In fact, Napoleon's cavalry was very effective with this.
You've seen movies, that's right, even of our own Western cavalry.
Yes, that's right. And so in the 19th century, the practiced saber took its place along with the foil in the fencing schools of Europe. Now, here we have Mr. Abram Cohen, a former national champion, and he was fencing with Mr. Niederkirchner, a fencing master. Okay. Now, may I have your blade, Abe, please? Now, look at this. The foil.
The guards
is
are
the saber.
different and bigger.
Yes, that's right.
This is sort of in a triangle, the blade. And
Yes.
then this is square.
That's right. You see, the guard is bigger to protect the knuckles against the cuts. And the blade itself is a little bit shorter than the one in the foil. And the triangle is because there's supposed to be a cutting edge on the thing.
It's supposed to simulate the actual combat
Yes,
saber that
but
they
it's
use.
still a light weapon, you see.
How about the area of the body? Is that identical with the foil?
No, in this weapon, we've increased the target. You can also hit the head and the arms as well as the trunk. Not the legs, because they're not too vulnerable when you're on horseback, you see.
And also, we saw them slashing. Does this mean there's more of a way to make a point?
Oh, yes. But I think better would be if we demonstrated.
Fine.
Let's back up.
Yeah, good idea.
Now here is an example of the head cut. That's right.
That's
now
with
we
the
get
side
one.
with the cutting edge.
Right. Now he's going to cut the arm. Like that. And as in foil, he can make point attacks the same way. Because that also is valid, see? And then you can draw your opponent up with a feint to the head and cut him on the flank. See? Or you can draw them out of position and cut on the chest. Faint head, cut chest, you see. There are an infinite variation of this thing.
Seems to me with the blade coming at you both at the point and on the slash, this would be a very difficult kind of a match. You'd have to be very fast to block that blade.
Oh, yes, you do. And later on, you're going to see that in a real match. But the wider target and the fact that we can cut has made the play in this much wider and easier to follow for the spectator. However, the spectacular real match which these two gentlemen will put on will be a little later. First, I'd like you to see the third weapon, the épée.
How does the épée differ from the saber or the foil?
Well, it has an unlimited target. And it's a thrusting weapon, not like the saber. It's more like the foil in that respect, you see. Now here is Mr. Robert Driscoll, a former national champion. And he was fencing with Alfred Scrovish, who is an Olympic star. And as a matter of fact, this is Scrovish. Matter of fact, Mr. Driscoll is also the president of the Fencers Club, and I'd like you to meet him. Bob, will you meet Joan and Jimmy and Sonny?
Why don't you come over here?
You do.
Jimmy, very nice to see you. I'm happy to have you here. I hope you learn to be fencers.
Well, certainly if we can learn anywhere, we can learn here with the experts you have around.
That's right, and I hope you'll enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. May I borrow your weapon?
Certainly may, Joe.
Now there's the foil, and there's the épée.
The guards are bigger and almost the same now.
You're
This
right.
looks like a triangle also.
Well, it is a slightly triangular, but more important, it's a rigid blade, not flexible like the foil. Hmm?
Yes.
All right, so that it's a little different than both the saber and the foil. How about the target area? Is that different?
Well, yes. With this heavier weapon, we've made the target unlimited. That is, you could hit the toe, or the top of the head, or the hand, anywhere at all. The only thing that counts, exactly, without the danger. Now, we don't have the conventions that we do in foil. and
No
saber.
right-of-way?
No right of way.
Ah.
The only thing that matters is who touched who first. Shall we show you?
I'd like to see it.
And this one I'm surely going to back up.
Haha. You see, they feel each other out a great deal more in this weapon because there's so much more target to defend. There's a nice shot. You notice they don't close distance too much here. Now that's what we call a flesh. You know what the flesh is? That's the French for arrow. And that's what
I
the
think
idea
that's the part
is.
that the sword ran through. No, something else again. You know, it's interesting to remember, Joan and Jimmy, while you're watching this great sport here, it all started with a very deadly kind of thing, dueling. Yes, dueling was really for keeps, you know, and out of it has grown this very magnificent sport. Where did dueling start?
Well, you know, we've talked about the rapier, but actually fencing has many other ancestors besides the rapier. And I'd like to show you some of them.
Fine.
You know, the cavemen probably were the first to duel when they started swinging these big clubs at each other. Of course,
Clumsy, but probably
yes,
effective.
and I wouldn't say that was very good fencing. But then they discovered iron, and they started using heavy weapons and wearing very clumsy,
Wow,
heavy
yeah.
armor, you see?
Tremendous. This is a
For instance-
regular armory table.
Yes.
He sure is.
That's right. Now, for instance, here is a mace. All of these things came from the Metropolitan Museum, you see. And there's the real authentic mace. You want to try that?
You know, it looks something like in storybooks the king and the queen used to hold these.
Well, I don't think they
Well,
probably held a ceremonial version of this.
I think you mean the scepter, but it's shaped a little bit like it. I think you're right,
This
except
was-
they didn't swing at people with it.
But if you did, you'd really...
Feel it.
Yes.
Feel it indeed.
Now, here's another one. This is the broadsword, Jimmy. Let's see you try that,
Ooh,
huh?
That's tremendous. How
Wow,
did they hit each other with it?
Well, I don't know. I guess they were pretty strong, you know.
They must have been men in those
Yes,
days.
yes,
It looks like what
certainly
Sir
were.
Lancelot used when he saved Lady Guinevere.
But I'll tell you something. All of this was no good at all when gunpowder came along. Because gunpowder made the armor obsolete, you see. Then the lighter weapons began to appear. But you know what? The musketeers got their name from the fact that they used to carry a musket.
Well, in all the movies I see them in, they have swords.
Yes, that's right, because you see, the musket could only fire one shot at a time, and then it took a long time to reload. So, in the end, they still had to rely on their swords.
They always won, too.
Well, I'm afraid they wouldn't against a modern fencer.
Why not?
Well, techniques change and improve. For instance, in the early days, they used to have the sword only for the offense and would use this type of dagger to defend themselves. So they'd stand sideways and circle each other rather clumsily, really,
Yes.
until somebody got the idea to be able to use the sword for both purposes. When that was done, they could stand sideways, offer a smaller target, and then they could move around much faster, you see. And as swordsmanship was developed, fencing schools began to spring up all over the European continent, and fencing masters became very famous.
Well, I bet you nobody played hooky from that school.
No, I guess
I don't
not,
think
because
so.
that was, as I say, for real. They were learning how to defend themselves against brigands and robbers and thieves. So they learned their lessons well, or else they probably didn't survive long.
That's right. And you know, the nobles would hire these fencing masters from Spain and Italy and France to teach them their own special secret thrusts or coups. And sometimes they would even teach these behind closed doors. They were so secret. But today, the fencing master teaches us and concentrates on teaching us how to win fencing matches like the Olympic Games.
Now, you have a very fine fencing master right here at the club, don't you?
Oh, we certainly do. Michel Allot, I think you've met him.
Indeed, I have.
And as a matter of fact, he's the trainer of a world champion and is giving some lessons to some future champions. Maybe you'd like to take your lesson with him.
Great.
All right, I'll see you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Always start the lesson with the salut. Alors, le salut, 1, 2. Put your mask on. En garde. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello, Sonny.
Hello, Sonny.
How are
Pardon.
you?
This is Joan and this is Jimmy.
How do you do?
And as you see, they're all ready now. They've got their
Okay.
uniforms on, ready to join your class.
Perfect. You start first to take the mask. Scissors. Yes.
Jen?
Yes. Now the four, but before giving you the four, I want to give you a good advice. The first thing a fencer must learn is to never pick up a foil unless both he and his opponent are completely protected.
In other words, wearing the masks or the
Jacket and gloves. See?
You see, it's a weapon that's used for sport, but you have to have respect for it. All right, are they ready to join the class?
All right, let me introduce you to the class. Here is John. Here is Jimmy. All right, take your place, please. Now, we start with the salut. He's together.
I better put on your masks, John Jim.
Yeah. Well, that's right. All right. Alors, le salut, 1, 2. Now, en garde, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When I say step forward, you do one step forward, beginning with the right foot. All right? Step forward. Good. Step forward. Good. When I say step back, you do one step back, beginning with the left foot. Step back. Good. Now, extend the arm. Lunge. En garde. Perfect.
You know,
step back.
actually, if that middle boy there will move over toward me a little more, I think everybody will have more room. Move over,
this way,
Joe.
that's
Jim.
right.
Okay.
That's perfect. Bon. Now, extend the arm. Lunge. Good. En garde. You recover. Rassembler. Saluer. 1, 2.
Well,
Take some rest. That's perfect.
Gee, Sonny, that was
Congratulations.
fun. And it was really exciting.
thank Monsieur Allot.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, if you keep
for
on
letting us
taking
join the
expert,
class.
taking expert instruction like that, you'll be able to be a very good fencer pretty soon. Thank you, Michel, and thank
You're
you,
welcome.
ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to see that saber contest, you know, over there. We'll see this real contest with exciting sabers right after this word about another CBS television show.
There's another wonderful trip coming Wednesday evening when that world traveler Lowell Thomas will invite you to go along with him for high adventure in remote and little-known countries of Africa. Join him on the Sahara Desert as he rides to meet the world's most savage fighting men, the Tuaregs, who wear blue veils to keep evil spirits from entering their noses. With Lowell Thomas leading the way, visit the pygmies of the Belgian Congo and look in on their strange witchcraft ceremonies. Go to the big game country of Kenya and then meet more black magic in Madagascar when you'll watch an eerie Dance of the Dead never before seen on film. It'll be high adventure all the way, from Timbuktu on across the desert to the jungle. High adventure with a man who's spent a lifetime exploring the world's strangest, most colorful corners. Join Lowell Thomas next Wednesday when High Adventure will come to you over most of these stations.
Well, Joan and Jimmy, now we've seen the 3 types of fencing weapons there are. Do you remember what they are?
I did the foil, the saber, and the AK.
Wonderful. You are marvelous. Now we want to see the saber match.
Now
we
you're
made.
going to see that saber match, I promised you. You know, the World Championships are going to be held in Philadelphia the last 2 weeks of August, so we thought we'd put it on the way it'll be held there. First, there's a jury, very distinguished jury. Let me introduce you to them. Colonel Henry Breckinridge, Assistant Secretary of War and former captain of the Olympic team. And then Mr. Eugene Blanc. He's a famous attorney and president of the French hospital. Then Mr. Tracy Jekyll, a distinguished furrier and on the Olympic team many, many times.
What do you do?
And then Mr. Alex Solomon. He's a manufacturer and a very distinguished fencer. And then finally, Miguel de Capriles, captain of the 1952 Olympic team and a law school dean.
And your brother.
And my brother.
That's right. Now, actually, we'd have all these judges in a championship
That's
match.
right.
All right.
Now that we have the contestants, you have met them before, Mr. Abram Cohen on that side and Mr. Niederkirchner on this side. Okay?
Now, they start saluting each other and the judges.
They always salute themselves and the jury. You notice that Cohen is rather tall and he'll rely on his reach, while Niederkirchner is short and will rely on speed. Mr. Cohen hit with the point, and the score is 1-0. The director always points at the person. Now the score is 1-all. The touch is on the arm. See that? Mr. Niederkirchner, with his speed, finally got inside and hit Mr. Cohen. You see? Mr. Cohen's touch was not. Oh, that was a direct attack, making the score 2-all.
Are you ready? Ready.
See, that's the parry to the head and the riposte. Did you see that?
Yes.
Now it's 3-all, and they always change sides when one man has scored 3 touches.
Okay. Are you ready? Ready?
See, the man in the middle always says.
Touches to the right.
Now the score is 3-all, you see, it's even it up.
Ready?
Another parry, that's against Mr. Cohen. The score is 4-3.
One more point.
And the 5th touch by Mr. Niederkirchner, and that is the bout. What do you think of that, huh? Now, Joan and Jimmy, what did you think of all that?
Well, it was pretty fierce, but they didn't do it like they do in the movies. Or on television.
Well, no, they didn't. But you know what? In the movies and in television, they rehearse these things in a sequence with a lot of tables and chairs and stairs to make it all exciting. As a matter of fact, you know, we prevailed on a television star to show us just that kind of thing. Would you like to see it?
Sure would.
All right, let's go.
I wonder what that star could be. Hey, look at that. What is it? It's Sonny. Sonny! You're going to fence?
Who were you expecting, Tony Curtis? Well, I'll tell you, I can't really, but Michelle and I have cooked up a kind of a little routine as they might have in Hollywood. Now, here's the setup, here's the scenario. It's in full color, of course, widescreen. You're trapped on a tower by a very evil prince, right?
Right.
Now, the evil prince's name is Michel Allot, right? And I'm the good guy. And this is the last 3 minutes of the picture, so I haven't got much time to save you. Are you ready?
Ready?
All right.
Good luck, Sonny.
Thank you.
again.
This is short movie enough for me. Wow.
Ah.
Great. Thanks, Sonny. You got us great.
That's nothing. Well, you know, Sonny, I'm afraid against a serious, good technique fencer would be any good.
What do you think, John Jimmy?
I bet Sonny could beat him again.
Think so? I'll tell you what, I'll try it again. Trying my best. And Michelle, this time, you do it right. Okay?
Come on.
All right. And I'll call the touches.
Okay, good. Poor Michelle.
Again, Sonny. Again, Sonny. Again, Sonny. Oh, my goodness. Oh,
Poor Sonny.
poor Sonny.
You all right, man?
Well, I think so, yes. Michelle, thank you ever so much for showing us that it takes more than just bravado to be a good and skilled fencer. And thank you, Joe, for letting us come down here to the Fences Club and for all your compatriots who came down to help show us what a great, wonderful modern sport this is.
We were delighted to have you, Sonny. And remember, you two, I hope you come back often. And whenever you pick that foil up, have that mask, the glove, and the jacket on, huh?
Right.
Nice.
Thank you and good luck.
Bye.
Yep, I got it. Okay. Now, Joan and Jimmy, here I am breathless again. Next week we'll be at the Mont Saint-Gabriel ski area up in the Laurentian Mountains in Canada.
Boy.
We're going to find out how to ski, learn from expert ski instructors. I know that neither of you have been on skis before, and me too. I haven't been on either, but we're going to find out how to do it, and we'll see some of the world champion skiers in action, way up there in Canada. Incidentally, I just want to remind our friends about the fact that when they write to us with their suggestions for trips, they get this postcard with our picture on it. And Joan, why don't you tell them the address to send it to?
It's right there. Let's take a trip. 45 Madison Avenue, New York, 22, New York.
Right. We'll be glad to receive any of your suggestions on places to visit. Incidentally, in 2 weeks, we'll be aboard the USS United States, the third largest ship in the world and the fastest.
What?
Right. 2 weeks out in Los Angeles, a visit to the Boy Scouts out there, and our host for that day will be the movie star Jimmy Stewart. So we have some exciting trips coming up. Plan on being with us next week. We'll see you up in Canada at Mont Saint-Gabriel for skiing. Bye.
Let's Take a Trip came to you today live from the Fencers Club in New York City. Right now, you want to know where Jack Benny's going? He's on his way to visit John Forsythe, better known, of course, as Bachelor Father. Actually, Jack's dropping by as a good neighbor to see if he can't help in the latest problem with niece Kelly, who's spending all her time at a neighbor's house. Laugh as Jack and John both turn detective to find out what's so interesting to her there when Jack Benny visits Bachelor Father tonight. Somebody else who has problems with children is Danny Thomas. Tomorrow night he looks back over the days of his honeymoon, a honeymoon that wasn't as private as most since his wife's little daughter went along and his own son and daughter too. Meanwhile, if you never thought words were fun, it's time you watched CBS Television's fascinating program that takes the English language apart and then gives you the last word on how to put it together again. See The Last Word later today over most of these stations.